Captain Hyunwoo Kim floated in the command center of his patrol ship, watching the stars through the large viewing window. His ship, the Blue Dragon, moved slowly around the edge of the solar system. It was a normal day, or so he thought. The comm system made a soft beeping sound that meant someone was trying to talk to them. "Captain, we have an incoming message," said Lieutenant Minho Park from his station. "It's not from Earth Command. The signal is coming from outside our system." Hyunwoo turned toward the communication station. Strange messages from space were not common. Most aliens stayed away from human space. The few that did come were usually traders or scientists who wanted to study Earth from far away. "Put it on the main screen," Hyunwoo said. The screen filled with the image of a tall, thin creature with blue skin and 4 arms. Its head was larger than a human head, and its eyes were completely black. When it spoke, the words came out in perfect Korean, which was even stranger. "I am Prime Council member Veltar of the Ethon Collective. I speak for the Galactic Council. We have been watching your species for some time now. We have decided that humans are too dangerous to be left alone." Hyunwoo felt his stomach drop. The Galactic Council was real. Humans had heard stories about it, but no one was sure if it existed. The Council was supposed to be a group of alien species that controlled most of the galaxy. Veltar continued speaking. "Your recent actions in the Vega system have been noted. You attacked peaceful trading ships and destroyed property that did not belong to you. This behavior shows that humans are what we call a Tier 5 aggressive species." "That's not true," Hyunwoo said, even though he knew the alien probably could not hear him. "The attacks near Vega had been against pirates who were stealing from human colonies. Earth ships had only defended themselves and their people." "The Galactic Council has made a decision," Veltar said. "Earth must stop all military actions immediately. You will surrender your warships to our control. You will accept our peace officers on all your worlds. You have 72 standard hours to agree to these terms." The alien's image changed. Now the screen showed massive ships floating in space. There were hundreds of them, each one larger than Earth's biggest military vessel. The ships had smooth white surfaces that seemed to glow with their own light. "If you do not agree, we will place a complete blockade around your solar system. No ships will enter or leave. We will relocate your population to worlds where you cannot harm others. This is not a threat. This is what will happen." The message ended. The screen went black. Hyunwoo stared at the empty screen for a long moment. Around him, his crew sat in shocked silence. "Sir, should we send this to Earth Command?" asked Lieutenant Park. "Yes," Hyunwoo said quietly. "Send it immediately, and prepare our ship for combat readiness." "Sir, you heard what they said. They have hundreds of ships." Hyunwoo looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, alien fleets were probably already moving toward Earth. "I know, but we're human. We don't surrender without a fight." On the research ship New Seoul, Dr. So-Young Park studied the alien message for the 5th time. As Earth's lead expert on alien life, she had been called to analyze every detail of the transmission. What she found worried her more than the threat itself. "They don't understand us at all," she said to her assistant, Dr. Jinwoo Lee. "Look at how they describe our actions near Vega. They call it unprovoked aggression." Dr. Lee pulled up the files on the Vega incident. "But we were protecting our colonies. The ships we destroyed were pirates." "Exactly. But the Council sees any use of force as aggression. They don't understand the difference between attack and defense." So-Young pointed to the alien's words on her screen. "Their whole message talks about peace and relocation. They think moving us to other worlds is a kind thing to do." "What does this mean for our response?" Dr. Lee asked. So-Young was quiet for a moment. "It means they expect us to be reasonable. They expect us to calculate the odds and surrender when we see how powerful they are. They have no idea what humans do when someone threatens their families." Back on Earth, President Taemin Lee sat in the underground command center beneath Seoul. The room was filled with his top military advisors and scientists. Everyone looked worried. The alien message had reached Earth 2 hours ago, and already the government was trying to figure out what to do. "How many ships do we have that could fight?" President Lee asked. Admiral Ji-Hoon Choi looked at his reports. "We have 43 military vessels that could be used in combat." "But, sir, their technology is far ahead of ours. Our best weapons might not even scratch their shields." General Mi Young Kang spoke up. Mr. President, we should consider surrender. If we fight and lose, they might kill everyone. If we surrender now, at least our people will live. Live as prisoners on alien worlds, said Commander Dong Hyun Yoon. He was the head of Mars Colony Defense and had joined the meeting by video link. Sir, with respect, I disagree with General Kang. These aliens think they can push us around because we're small and weak. If we surrender now, every alien species in the galaxy will think humans are easy targets. Dr. Yoonji Nam, Earth's expert on war psychology, nodded. Commander Yoon is right about one thing. The Council expects us to be logical. They expect us to see their big fleet and give up. But humans don't always act logically when they're threatened. President. Lee looked around the room. What are our options? Admiral Choi pulled up a star map. The Council ships are already moving toward our system. They'll be here in 60 hours. Even if we gathered every human ship in space, we'd be outnumbered 20-1. What about our secret weapons? Asked the President. The room went quiet. Everyone knew about the classified military projects, but few knew the details. Admiral Choi opened a secure file on his computer. We have several experimental weapons that were deemed too dangerous for normal use, he said carefully. Biological weapons, psychological warfare tools, and some kinetic weapons that violate several peace treaties. Why were they considered too dangerous? President Lee asked. Dr. Nam answered. Because they're designed to cause maximum fear and suffering, not just to win battles. They were created for situations where we needed to send a message rather than just defeat an enemy. Commander Yoon's voice came through the video link. Sir, I've been thinking about this council message. They're not trying to destroy us. They're trying to manage us. They see us as a problem that needs to be solved peacefully. What's your point? President Lee asked. My point is that they've never dealt with a species that chooses war over peace. They've never met anyone crazy enough to fight a battle they can't win just to prove a point. The president was quiet for a long time. Outside, Earth's cities continued. Their daily routines, not knowing that alien fleets were coming toward them. Most humans didn't even know about the threat yet. How long until the news gets out? President Lee asked. We can keep it quiet for maybe 12 more hours, said his communications advisor. After that, someone will leak it. President Lee stood up and walked to the large map showing Earth's position in space. The blue dot that represented their homeworld looked very small, surrounded by all that empty space. If we surrender, we lose our freedom. If we fight and lose, we might all die. But if we fight and make them afraid of us... He turned to face his advisors. What's the worst thing we could do to them? Not to win, but to make sure they never want to fight us again? Admiral Choi looked uncomfortable. Sir, are you asking about Operation Earthshaker? Tell me about it. It's not a battle plan, sir. It's a plan to traumatize an entire galactic civilization. The goal is to make our enemies so afraid of humans that they leave us alone forever, even if we can't actually defeat them. The president looked around the room one more time. His advisors waited for his decision. In 60 hours, the most powerful military force in the galaxy would arrive at Earth. What happened next would decide the future of the human race. Prepare Operation Earthshaker, President Lee said quietly. And may God forgive us for what we're about to do. The deep underground meeting room in Seoul had no windows and no natural light. President Tae-min Lee sat at the head of a long table surrounded by Earth's most important military leaders and scientists. The room smelled like coffee and fear. Everyone had been awake for 20 hours straight since the alien message arrived. General Mi Young Kang spread out star charts on the table. Her hands shook slightly from too much caffeine and stress. Mr. President, I need to say this one more time. We cannot win a direct fight against the Galactic Council. Their smallest ships are bigger than our largest ones. Their shields can stop nuclear weapons. Their technology is hundreds of years ahead of ours. She pointed to the numbers on her tablet. Even if every human in the galaxy joined the fight, we would lose. The smart thing to do is surrender and hope they treat us well. Commander Dong Hyun Yoon appeared on the video screen from Mars. His red hair was messy and his eyes were bloodshot, but his voice was strong. General Kang, with respect, you're thinking like them. You're being logical and reasonable, but humans aren't always logical. What do you mean? President Lee asked. Yoon leaned forward toward his camera. Sir, I grew up on Mars. Life there is hard. Sometimes the air recyclers break down or the water pumps stop working or dust storms damage the solar panels. When that happens, you can't sit down and calculate your chances of survival. You have to act, even when the odds are bad. Dr. Yoonji Nam nodded. Commander Yoon understands something important. The Galactic Council expects us to think rationally. They expect us to look at their big fleet and surrender because fighting would be stupid. But humans do stupid things when they're angry, Yoon continued. We do things that don't make sense. We fight battles we can't win just to prove we won't be pushed around. Admiral Ji-hoon Choi opened a secure file on his computer. If we're seriously considering Operation Earthshaker, everyone needs to understand what it means. This isn't a plan to win a war. It's a plan to traumatize our enemies so badly that they never want to fight us again. President Lee looked around the table. Explain it to me. Dr. Jin A. Song, the head of Earth's Psychological Warfare Division, spoke up. She was a small woman with gray hair, but her voice was cold and steady. The plan is based on one simple idea, sir. Peaceful species like the council members have never experienced real war. They've never seen what happens when someone is willing to do absolutely anything to hurt their enemies. She activated a holographic display above the table. It showed alien psychology profiles that Earth scientists had been secretly building for decades. The council species value peace, order, and preservation above everything else. They're terrified of chaos and destruction. Their worst nightmare is meeting someone who doesn't share their values. So we become their worst nightmare, Yoon said, from the screen. Admiral Choi pulled up weapons specifications. We have biological weapons that can cause fear and panic without killing. We have psychological warfare tools that can broadcast sounds and images directly into alien minds. We have kinetic weapons that can spread radioactive material across entire star systems. And we have something else, Dr. Song added. We have human history. Every war we've ever fought, every terrible thing we've done to each other, every brutal tactic we've developed over thousands of years of conflict. General Kang looked sick. You're talking about using our own cruelty as a weapon? Yes, Dr. Song said simply. The Council thinks they know what humans are like because they've been watching us for a few decades. They see our cities and our art and our science. They think we're just another species that can be managed with the right pressure. President Lee was quiet for a long moment. But they haven't seen our wars. Exactly, sir. They've never seen what humans do when someone threatens their families. They don't know about the Crusades or World War II or the Mongolian conquests. They don't understand that humans can be incredibly cruel when they think it's necessary. Commander Yoon's voice came through the speakers. Sir, I have a question. What happens after we scare them? Even if this plan works, we'll still be surrounded by enemies, Dr. Nam answered. Actually, Commander, that's the beauty of the plan. If we can make the Council afraid enough, they won't want to be our enemies anymore. They'll want to avoid us completely. She brought up a psychology chart. Fear is more powerful than hatred for species like theirs. If someone hates you, they might still fight you. But if someone is truly terrified of you, they'll do anything to avoid conflict. The president stood up and walked to the wall display showing Earth's current military assets. 43 combat ships scattered across the solar system. It looked pathetic compared to the hundreds of council vessels heading their way. How would we start? He asked. Admiral Choi opened another file. Phase 1 involves our stealth ships. We have 6 vessels that the Council doesn't know about. They're equipped with the most experimental weapons we have. Phase 2 is psychological warfare, Dr. Song continued. We broadcast human war sounds, battle cries, and historical footage to every Council ship. Species that have never heard screaming or gunfire will be unprepared for the psychological impact. Phase 3 is biological warfare, said Dr. Kyung Min, Han from the Disease Research Center. We release modified viruses that cause panic attacks and hallucinations in alien species. They won't die, but they'll experience their worst fears while fully conscious. President Lee turned back to his advisors. And Phase 4? The room went silent. Finally, Dr. Song spoke. Phase 4 is showing them who we really are. We transmit every piece of human military history directly to their civilian populations. Every battlefield recording, every tactical manual, every account of human cruelty throughout history. The goal isn't to threaten them, Admiral Choi explained. The goal is to show them what humans are capable of when they're desperate. We let them imagine what we might do if they push us further. General Kang shook her head. This is insane. You're talking about turning ourselves into the monsters of the galaxy. Better to be monsters than slaves, Yoon said from the screen. President Lee walked back to his chair but didn't sit down. What are the chances this works? Dr. Nam consulted her notes. Unknown, sir. No one has ever tried to defeat an advanced civilization through pure psychological warfare, but we have some advantages, such as the Council has been peaceful for 3,000 years. Their military leaders have never faced an enemy that fights without rules. Their civilian populations have never experienced real fear. They're psychologically vulnerable in ways they don't understand. The president looked at each person around the table. These were Earth's best minds, people who had dedicated their lives to protecting humanity. Now he was asking them to plan, something that would change how the galaxy saw their species forever. There's one more thing, Dr. Song said quietly. If we do this, there's no going back. Once the galaxy sees us as monsters, that's what we'll be. Our children and grandchildren will inherit that reputation. But they'll be free, Yoon added. They'll be alive and free on their own worlds, not relocated to alien prison planets. A new voice came from the corner of the room. Captain Subin Oh had been quietly monitoring long-range sensors throughout the meeting. Sir, I'm detecting movement in the outer system. The Council advanced scouts have arrived. They're moving toward our colonies. Everyone turned to look at the sensor readings. 12 alien ships, each one massive and gleaming white, were approaching the mining stations near Jupiter. More ships were visible on the edge of sensor range. How long until they reach Earth? President Lee asked. 36 hours, sir. The president closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his expression was hard and determined. Dr. Song, begin preparations for Operation Earthshaker. Admiral Choi, get our stealth ships into position. Commander Yoon, prepare Mars colony for possible evacuation. He looked around the table one last time. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten a human family. God help us all. The room erupted into activity as Earth's leaders began preparing for the most desperate gamble in human history. Outside, the first alien ships were already scanning human installations, confident that their overwhelming force would bring quick surrender. They had no idea what was coming for them. Colonel Jae-sung Park floated in the command center of the stealth ship Incheon's Fury. The ship was invisible to most sensors, hidden in the shadow of Jupiter's largest moon. Around him, his crew prepared weapons that had never been tested in real combat. These were weapons designed by humans who understood that sometimes winning meant making your enemy afraid to fight you ever again. Colonel, we have visual contact with the Council fleet, reported Lieutenant Bo Young Kim from the sensor station. 12 ships in the advance group with more coming behind them. Jae-sung looked at the display showing the alien vessels. They were beautiful in their own way, with smooth white hulls that seemed to glow with inner light. The ships moved in perfect formation, confident and proud. The aliens inside probably thought this would be easy. How long until they reach the mining station? Jae-sung asked. 15 minutes, sir. The mining station had 300 human workers and their families. Earth Command had ordered them to evacuate, but some had refused to leave. They said it was their home, and they would not run from aliens. Begin Phase 1, Jae-sung ordered. His weapons officer, Major Seung-ho Lee, activated the ship's special payload. The Incheon's Fury carried 12 missiles, but these were not normal weapons. Each missile contained radioactive waste, biological, agents, and millions of tiny robots programmed to eat through alien ship materials. Sir, the Council ships are hailing the mining station, reported the communications officer. Put it on speaker. The voice that came through was calm and mechanical. Human workers of Mining Station Gamma 7, this is Council Commander Thys of the Benevolent Hierarchy. You are ordered to power down your facilities and prepare for peaceful relocation. You will not be harmed if you comply. Jae-sung smiled grimly. The aliens really believed they were being kind. They thought humans would be grateful to be moved to safer worlds. They had no idea what they had just triggered. Fire all missiles, he ordered. The weapons streaked toward the Council fleet at incredible speed. The alien ships immediately activated their energy shields. the same shields that had easily stopped human weapons before. The aliens probably thought this attack would fail, just like all the others. The missiles struck the shields and seemed to disappear in flashes of light. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the real horror began. Each missile had been designed to break apart when it hit an energy barrier. Instead of trying to punch through the shields, the weapons spread out into clouds of radioactive dust and nanobots. The particles were too small for the shields to stop, and they began settling on the alien ship hulls. "What are the nanobots programmed to do?" asked Lieutenant Kim. Major Lee watched his instruments as the tiny robots went to work. They eat metal and reproduce. Every minute there are twice as many as before, and they're programmed to broadcast a signal that sounds like human screaming. Commander Thiss's calm voice came over the radio again, but now it sounded worried. "Unknown human vessel, you have used prohibited weapons. Cease your attack immediately." Instead of responding, Jae-sung activated Phase 2 of the operation. The Inchen's fury began broadcasting on all frequencies, sending sounds that no peaceful species had ever heard. Battle cries from ancient human wars, the clash of swords and axes, gunfire and explosions. The screams of wounded soldiers calling for their mothers, but the worst sounds were the ones that showed human determination. Recordings of soldiers who kept fighting even when they were dying. Voices of people who chose to burn down their own cities rather than let enemies take them. The sound of humans who had decided that if they could not win, they would make their enemies pay a terrible price for victory. "Sir, the alien ships are trying to retreat," Lieutenant Kim reported. "Deploy the gravity mines," Jae-sung ordered. The Inchen's fury released dozens of small devices that had been built in Earth's most secret laboratories. Each gravity mine created a pocket of twisted space that trapped nearby ships. The alien vessels found themselves unable to move as the mines activated around them. Commander Thiss's voice came over the radio again, but now it was filled with panic. "What are you doing to us? Our ship systems are failing." The nanobots were spreading across the alien hulls, eating through the metal and broadcasting their horrible sounds. The gravity mines held the ships in place while the psychological warfare continued. Sounds of human warfare filled every communication channel. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Dr. Woo Jin Lee on the research vessel Busan," the communications officer reported. "Put him through." Dr. Lee's voice was steady and professional. "Colonel Park, we're ready to begin Phase 3. The biological agents are prepared for release." "Do it." The research ship Busan had been hiding near Saturn, carrying the most disturbing weapons in Earth's arsenal. These were viruses designed not to kill, but to cause maximum psychological damage. The diseases would make alien crews experience their worst nightmares while keeping them fully awake and aware. Dr. Lee had spent years studying alien biology and psychology. He knew exactly what would terrify each species in the Council fleet. The viruses were engineered to trigger panic attacks, hallucinations, and overwhelming fear. The aliens would remain physically healthy, but their minds would be filled with horror. "Biological agents away," Dr. Lee reported. Invisible clouds of engineered viruses drifted toward the trapped Council ships. The particles would seep through the smallest cracks in the hulls and spread through the alien air systems. Within minutes, every crew member would be experiencing their personal version of hell. Commander Thiss's transmissions became increasingly desperate. "Please stop this attack. We only wanted to relocate your people for their own safety. We meant no harm." Lieutenant Haiwan Kim, the ship's psychological warfare specialist, opened a channel to respond. But instead of words, she transmitted something far worse. The sound was a recording from Earth's history, from a battle where human soldiers had been surrounded and outnumbered. Instead of surrendering, they had sung their national anthem while fighting to the death. The aliens had never heard anything like it. To species that valued survival above all else, the idea of choosing death over surrender was incomprehensible and terrifying. "Sir, we're getting reports from the other stealth ships," the communications officer said. "They're engaging Council forces throughout the system. The aliens are retreating from every position." Jae-sung nodded. The plan was working better than anyone had hoped. The Council fleet was not just being defeated, it was being traumatized. The alien crews would carry the memory of this encounter for the rest of their lives. "Colonel, we have a problem," Major Lee reported. The Council ships are broadcasting distress calls to their main fleet. They're calling for immediate reinforcement. Good, Jae-sung said. The more aliens who hear about this, the better. He activated the ship's recording systems. Everything that happened here would be transmitted back to Earth and then spread throughout human space. Future generations needed to understand what their leaders had done and why. Commander Theiss made one final transmission. Her voice was broken and terrified. "We don't understand. Why are you doing this to us? We tried to help you." This time, Jae-sung answered personally. "You threatened our families. You came to our home and told us we had to leave. Did you really think humans would just accept that? But we offered you better worlds, safer places to live. We don't want safer places. We want to be left alone. And now you know what happens when you don't leave us alone." The alien ships finally managed to break free from the gravity mines, but they were damaged and covered in nanobots. The crews were hallucinating and panicking from the biological weapons. As they limped away from human space, they broadcasted their horror to anyone who would listen. "Sir, long-range sensors show the main Council fleet has stopped advancing," Lieutenant Kim reported. "They're holding position at the edge of the system." "They're waiting to see what happened to their advance guard," Jae-sung realized. "They're about to find out." The damaged alien ships reached the main fleet and immediately began transmitting everything they had experienced. The recordings of human warfare sounds, the sight of nanobots eating through their hulls, the memory of feeling helpless while biological weapons attacked their minds. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Council faced an enemy that fought not to win territory or resources but to send a message. The message was simple: leave humans alone or experience something worse than death. "Colonel, we're receiving new orders from Earth Command," the communications officer said. "We're to continue operations until the entire Council fleet withdraws from human space." Jae-sung looked at the tactical display. There were still hundreds of alien ships out there, but many were already turning away. Word was spreading through the Council fleet about what humans were capable of. "Set course for the main fleet," he ordered. "Let's show them what else we can do." The Incheon's fury moved through space like a predator, invisible and deadly. Behind it, the other stealth ships followed. Ahead of them, the most powerful military force in the galaxy was discovering what it meant to be afraid. Prime Counselor HFY of the Serene Collective stood in the central chamber of the Council station, her blue skin pale with shock. The holographic displays around her showed reports flooding in from across the galaxy. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained peace through wisdom and negotiation. Now, for the first time since its founding, they faced a species that responded to diplomacy with warfare. "Show me the transmission from Commander Theiss again," she ordered. The display activated, showing the damaged Council ship limping back from human space. Commander Theiss appeared on screen, her normally calm features twisted with terror and confusion. Her ship's hull was covered in strange black spots that seemed to move and spread. "Prime Counselor, I must report complete failure of our peacekeeping mission," Theiss said, her voice shaking. "The humans, they don't fight like any species we've encountered. They use weapons designed to cause fear rather than death. Their ships broadcast sounds of violence and suffering that we've never heard before." Counselor Vorth of the Ancient Wisdom stepped forward. He was the oldest member of the Council, having lived through 500 years of galactic peace. "Surely, you exaggerate, Commander. No civilized species would use psychological warfare." "Sir, I'm transmitting the audio recordings now," Theiss replied. The sound that filled the Council chamber was unlike anything the aliens had ever experienced. It was the sound of human warriors from ancient Earth, screaming battle cries as they charged toward certain death. The sound of metal weapons clashing against armor and shields. The sound of soldiers dying far from home, calling out names of loved ones they would never see again. Several Council members stepped back from the display. Counselor Mireth of the Peaceful Gardens, a species that had never known violence, began to shake visibly. "Turn it off," HFY ordered. "We understand, but..." Commander Theiss wasn't finished. "That's not the worst part, Prime Counselor. They released biological agents that caused our crew to experience hallucinations. We saw our worst fears while remaining fully conscious, and their weapons, they covered our ships with machines that eat metal and multiply. We could hear them, working like tiny screams getting louder every minute. Counselor Drex of the Logical Assembly, a species known for their rational thinking, spoke up. Commander, you're describing weapons that serve no strategic purpose. Fear-based attacks don't capture territory or resources. Why would any species develop such things? The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Bo-Ra Jung of the Earth. Defense Force had been monitoring Council communications, and now she opened a direct channel to the Council station. Because we're not fighting for territory, Bo-Ra said, her image appearing on the Council's main screen. We're fighting to make sure you never threaten us again. The Council members stared at the human captain. She looked young and ordinary, nothing like the monsters their imaginations had created, but her eyes held a hardness that none of them had ever seen before. Captain Young, I am Prime Counselor HFY. We came to your system offering relocation to safer worlds. We meant no harm to your people. Bo-Ra smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You came to our home and told us we had to leave. You said we were too dangerous to be allowed freedom. Did you think we would just accept that? But surely you understand that violence only leads to more violence, Counselor Vorth said. Your response has been completely disproportionate to our actions. Disproportionate? Bo-Ra repeated. Let me show you something. The display changed to show human ships attacking Council facilities across 12 different star systems. But these weren't military targets. The humans were systematically destroying libraries, museums, and cultural centers. They were attacking everything the peaceful aliens considered sacred. You're destroying knowledge, Counselor Mireth whispered in horror. Those archives contain the collected wisdom of dozens of civilizations. Exactly, Bo-Ra said. We studied your species for decades before you revealed yourselves. We know what you value most. You care more about preserving culture than preserving lives. So we're threatening your culture. The display showed human forces infiltrating the Great Library of Kepler 438b. Instead of simply destroying the facility, they were corrupting the data, adding small errors to historical records, changing scientific formulas just enough to make them unreliable, introducing contradictions into philosophical texts. Dr. Kyung-Soo Han appeared on screen next to Captain Jung. It will take centuries for you to identify all the corrupted information, he explained calmly. Every piece of knowledge in that archive is now suspect. You'll have to verify everything from original sources, if you can find them. Counselor Vorth collapsed into his chair. For a species that worshipped knowledge and truth, this attack was worse than genocide. The humans weren't just destroying information, they were poisoning the very concept of reliable data. But why? HFY asked. What do you hope to gain by making us suffer? Captain Young leaned forward toward her camera. We want you to remember this feeling. Every time you think about threatening humans, we want you to remember how helpless you feel right now. We want you to be afraid. Commander Yejin Seo's voice joined the conversation from another location. Prime Counselor, we're just getting started. Would you like to see what else humans are capable of? Before anyone could answer, every screen in the Council chamber filled with images from human history. Battles from ancient times when warriors fought with swords and spears, soldiers from more recent wars carrying guns and explosives. But the most disturbing images showed the aftermath of human conflicts. Cities destroyed, populations displaced, entire civilizations changed forever. This is what humans do to each other when we disagree, Commander Seo explained. Imagine what we'll do to aliens who threaten our families. The historical footage continued, showing human warfare across thousands of years. The Council members watched in growing horror as they saw the evolution of human military technology and tactics. Each war seemed more destructive than the last, each new weapon more terrible than what came before. We've been studying your species' psychology. Dr. So-Young Park joined the conversation. You've lived in peace for so long that you've forgotten what real conflict looks like. You solve problems through negotiation and compromise. You can't imagine a species that chooses destruction over surrender. Counselor Drex tried to maintain his logical composure. But such behavior is illogical. Mutual destruction benefits no one. You're right, Dr. Park agreed. It's completely illogical. That's what makes it so effective. You can't negotiate with someone who's willing to burn down their own house just to hurt you. The transmission changed again, showing more human attacks across the galaxy. But now the focus was on civilian populations. human ships were broadcasting the historical footage directly to alien cities, showing millions of peaceful beings what warfare actually looked like. Panic spread through Council space as populations who had never experienced violence were suddenly confronted with humanity's entire military history. Some alien species went into shock. Others began preparing for the end of their civilizations. "Stop this madness," HFY pleaded. "Your people will be safe. We'll withdraw our fleets and leave your system alone." "That's not enough anymore," Captain Young replied. "You've made this a galaxy-wide issue. Now every species in the Council knows that humans exist and that we're dangerous. How long before another alien race decides to solve the human problem?" She was right, and HFY knew it. The knowledge of human capabilities was spreading beyond the Council. Soon other species would hear about Earth and might decide to act preemptively. "What do you want from us?" the Prime Counselor asked. "We want the entire galaxy to understand what happens when you threaten humans," Commander Seo answered. "We want every alien species to know that we exist, where we are, and what we'll do if anyone tries to move us or control us." President Taemin Lee's image appeared on the main screen. The other humans stepped aside to let him speak directly to the Council leadership. "Prime Counselor HFY, I want you to understand something," the President said. "This isn't revenge. This is education. We're teaching the galaxy about human nature, so this never has to happen again." "But the cost," Counselor Vorth whispered. "The suffering you're causing to innocent populations." President Lee's expression didn't change. "The cost of fighting us will always be higher than the cost of leaving us alone. That's the lesson you need to learn." The display showed human ships beginning to withdraw from their attacks. The damaged Council vessels were limping back toward their home systems, carrying traumatized crews and corrupted data archives. "We're returning to our space now," President Lee continued. "But we're keeping detailed records of every Council member species and their home worlds. If any of you ever threaten humanity again, we'll know who to visit first." As the transmission ended, the Council chamber fell silent. The most powerful civilization in the galaxy had just been defeated, not through superior technology or strategic genius, but through the simple willingness to cause more pain than they could endure. HFY looked around at her fellow Council members. Fear was written on every face. Admiral Hyunwoo Kim stood on the bridge of the newly built dreadnought Soul's Vengeance, watching alien ships flee from the edge of human space. 6 months had passed since humanity's brutal response to the Galactic Council's ultimatum, and the galaxy had changed forever. The ship's hull was painted black and covered with spikes made from the wreckage of Council vessels. Every design choice was meant to make aliens afraid to look at it. "Sir, we have another request for safe passage," reported Lieutenant Min Ho, Park from his communications station. "It's from a Zenthari trading vessel. They want to cross through our territory to reach the Vegan markets." Hyunwoo smiled grimly. Before the war, alien traders had avoided human space completely. Now they begged permission to use human trade routes because they were the fastest way to reach distant markets. The irony wasn't lost on him. "Approved, but escort them through. I don't want them getting too close to our colonies." The trading ship appeared on the viewing screen, a sleek silver vessel that kept its distance from the human dreadnought. Its captain transmitted the required identification codes and shipping manifests, along with a message of gratitude for safe passage through human space. "They're terrified of us," Lieutenant Park observed. "Good," Hyunwoo replied. "Fear keeps them honest." On the Council station orbiting Kepler 442, Prime Counselor HFY met with her advisors in a chamber that had been heavily modified since the human attacks. The walls now contained psychological shields designed to block traumatic transmissions, and the entire station was surrounded by early warning systems that could detect human ships from enormous distances. "Status report on the quarantine zone," she ordered. Counselor Vorth, who had aged visibly in the months since first encountering humanity, consulted his reports. "The 50-light-year exclusion zone remains in effect. No Council vessel has approached human territory without permission. Trade requests are processed through neutral third parties." "What about the Cultural Restoration Project?" HFY asked. Dr. Kelmar of the Information Recovery Division looked exhausted. "We've identified approximately 40,000 corrupted files in the Great Library. Each one must be verified against original sources, if they still exist." The Humans were very thorough in their data poisoning. The mention of the library attack still caused visible distress among the council members. The systematic corruption of their most precious knowledge had been more psychologically damaging than any military defeat. "Sir, we have a communication from the Fear Ambassador," announced the communications officer. Dr. So-Young Park appeared on the main screen, transmitting from Earth's new embassy station at the edge of the quarantine zone. Her title of Fear Ambassador was humanity's own creation, a diplomatic position that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. "Prime Counselor, I'm calling to discuss the incident near Proxima Station," Dr. Park said politely. HFY suppressed a shudder. 3 days ago, a council science vessel had accidentally drifted too close to human space while studying a nebula. The human response had been swift and terrifying. They had surrounded the alien ship with armed escorts and forced it to submit to a complete inspection. "Ambassador Park, our vessel was conducting legitimate scientific research," HFY said, carefully. "There was no intention to threaten human territory. I understand that, Prime Counselor, but you know how humans react to unannounced visitors. We've returned your ship and crew unharmed as promised. However, I need to remind you that the psychological treatment they received while in custody may require therapy." The human psychological treatment had involved exposing the alien crew to recordings of human warfare while explaining in detail what would happen to any species that threatened Earth. The council scientists had been released physically unharmed, but mentally traumatized. "We appreciate your restraint," HFY said, though the words felt strange. 6 months ago, she would never have imagined thanking someone for not torturing her people. Dr. Park nodded. "I also want to inform you that we're updating our threat assessment protocols. Any vessel approaching within 40 light-years of human space will now trigger an automatic response." "What kind of response?" Counselor Vorth asked nervously. "That depends on the vessel's behavior," Dr. Park replied with a slight smile. "But I assure you we've developed new techniques since our last encounter. We're always improving our methods." The transmission ended, leaving the council members in uncomfortable silence. The humans had turned fear into a diplomatic tool, using calculated displays of brutality to maintain their isolation. On Earth, President Taemin Lee walked through the halls of the new Global Defense Headquarters in Seoul. The building's design incorporated elements from ancient Korean fortresses, but the technology inside was purely modern. Holographic displays showed the positions of every known alien vessel within 100 light-years of human space. General Mi-Young Kang, who now headed the Department of Galactic Relations, joined him at the central display. "Sir, we're receiving reports from our intelligence networks. 3 more species have requested to join the quarantine agreement." "Which species?" President Lee asked. "The Crystalline Collective, the Harmony Seekers, and the Peaceful Unity Federation. They're all asking to be included in the non-aggression zone around human space." President Lee nodded. This was exactly what the planners had hoped for. By making themselves too dangerous to approach, humans had created a buffer of species that actively helped maintain their isolation. "What about the New Realism movement?" he asked. General Kang pulled up intelligence reports on her tablet. "It's growing. Commander Theiss has convinced 17 species to adopt what they call practical defense doctrines. They're building weapons and training military forces for the first time in centuries. This was an unexpected consequence of humanity's actions. The galaxy's peaceful species were beginning to arm themselves, not to attack humans, but to defend against the possibility that other species might be as brutal as Earth. Are we concerned about this militarization?" President Lee asked. "Dr. Nam doesn't think so," General Kang replied. "Her analysis suggests that species learning to defend themselves will actually reduce the chances of future conflicts. They're less likely to make unreasonable demands if they understand the potential costs." On Mars Colony, Commander Dong-Hyun Yoon trained a new generation of human officers in what had become known as the Terran Doctrine. The training facility was built inside natural caves, designed to look as threatening as possible to any alien. "Observers, remember," he told his students, "we don't fight to win battles. We fight to win peace. Every action you take should be designed to make our enemies prefer negotiation over conflict." Cadet Hae-Jin Kim raised her hand. "Sir, what if they try to build weapons to match ours?" "Let them try," Yoon replied. Physical weapons can be countered with better armor or shields, but psychological weapons are different. You can't build defenses against fear and despair. That's why humans will always have an advantage over species that value peace above all else. The training continued with simulations of alien encounters. Each scenario was designed to teach human officers how to calibrate their responses. Scary enough to deter aggression, but not so terrifying that they united the galaxy against Earth. At the edge of the solar system, Captain Subin O commanded the early warning station that monitored all approaches to human space. Her job was to identify potential threats and coordinate responses before aliens could get close to populated areas. "Captain, we have a small diplomatic vessel requesting permission to enter the system," reported her sensor operator. "Identify and background check," Subin ordered. "It's Ambassador Veltar of the Ethon Collective, sir. The same alien who delivered the original ultimatum to humanity." Subin smiled coldly. "How fitting. Grant permission for approach, but full escort protocol. I want him to see exactly what humanity has become." The alien ambassador's ship was met by a squadron of human vessels that looked like they had been designed by nightmares. Black hulls covered in spikes, weapon ports that glowed with threatening energy, and hull plating made from the wreckage of destroyed alien ships. Ambassador Veltar's transmission was received in the command center, where President Lee waited. To speak with him personally. "President Lee," Veltar said, his usually confident voice now carefully respectful. "I come bearing an invitation from the Galactic Council." "What kind of invitation?" President Lee asked. "The Council wishes to formally recognize human sovereignty over all territories within 50 light years of Earth. We also want to establish trade agreements and cultural exchange programs conducted at safe distances and under human supervision." President Lee considered the offer. 6 months ago, the Council had tried to force humanity into submission. Now they were offering everything humans had originally wanted: recognition, respect, and the right to be left alone. "What's the real reason for this offer?" President Lee asked. Veltar hesitated before answering. "President Lee, your people have become the galaxy's greatest fear. Species that have never known violence now have nightmares about human warfare. We want to find a way to coexist that doesn't involve anyone getting hurt. And if we refuse, then we continue to live in fear," Veltar admitted. "But we hope you'll